Am I approved? That's the big question that small business owners need answered when applying for an SBA 7A loan. You want certainty of knowing that you've been approved so that you can get back to running your business and start planning for the future. But what exactly does the approval process look like? Hey, I'm Ray Drew, an actual SBA lender, and in this video, I'm going to peel back the curtain and show you behind the scenes of the SBA approval process. Chances are this is your first SBA loan and the process can seem like an enigma. But if the 7A loan is the answer that you've been searching for, all you want to know is, am I approved and when can we close? First of all, super important to note, always work with a preferred lender. That way you have to just worry about one approval, which the bank makes in-house on behalf of the SBA. Otherwise, the bank's going to have to send the loan to the SBA for a second approval, which drags out the process and opens the door to some unexpected curveballs. All right, so the bank needs to underwrite and approve your loan so that they can issue a commitment letter. Only once you have a commitment letter in hand do you know that the bank is officially on board with your loan. And then it's just a matter of going through the closing process. So let's talk about what occurs in underwriting. When the loan goes to underwriting, someone from the bank goes through the file and is basically trying to figure out, one, if the loan is eligible for SBA, and two, if the borrower has the ability to repay the loan. Now, if you want to learn more about underwriting, just Google the 5 C's of credit. Now, as they are going through the loan request, they are creating what's called the SBA credit memo. This is a lengthy write-up that summarizes the entire loan request and includes business and personal cash flow analysis over the last 3 years. Now, once all that work is complete, they're going to submit the loan for approval. Now, this is the part that may shock you. SBA loans are typically approved one of two ways, either by an individual with credit authority or by a vote from a committee. Usually there's going to be a few credit officers at a bank with some level of approval authority. Perhaps they can sign off on up to $1 million, or maybe it's $3 million, whatever. And depending on the size of the shop, there may be as few as one person with this authority. You just have to hope that they're not on vacation when your loan is up next. You think I'm joking, but some of these shops are extremely reliant on one singular person. At my last shop, for example, my main credit officer was out of the office for a few days for surgery, and he was still reviewing credits, approving them from the hospital bed. And that was one of the top SBA lenders in the country. I'm telling you guys, we're very knowledgeable about SBA, but when it comes to organizational structure, we probably have some work to do. Okay, so the underwriter is going to recommend the loan for approval, and it will go to one of these approvers. And the approver might spend an hour tops reading through this credit memo, and one of three things is going to happen. They're either going to approve your loan, deny your loan, or ask some questions. Yes, you heard me right. You could potentially be spending the next 30 plus days working with your lender, only to have it land on the approver's desk, maybe for the first time, and maybe they spend 45 minutes getting to know you and the business, and then they decline it for any number of reasons. This is why it's so important to work with an expert and really know what you're getting yourself into before just jumping into bed with an SBA lender. Now, the good shops have processes in place that minimize that sort of thing. Now, the second thing that could happen is that they approve it and then you're on your way to closing. That's what we all hope for. Now, the third thing that could happen is they start asking questions. This could go one of two ways. Maybe they're asking a couple easy questions to circle back on, and that's fine, that's normal. Maybe the underwriter missed something. But if at this stage in the game, they start asking you some questions that catch you off guard, it's time to worry. Like, really? You're gonna ask me this now, at this stage in the game? So that's what the process looks like with a credit approver. And that's the easier path. Wait until you hear what goes on in these credit committees. After a certain dollar amount, loans need to go to a committee. Actually, some banks send all their loans to committee. Now, who's on this committee? Why should they get a vote? Do they even know anything about my business? These are great questions. A committee might consist of the chief credit officer, president, CEO, the CFO at the bank. You might even get a couple of board members at the bank, which is always fun. Maybe there's some retired bankers living down in Florida, so detached from reality that, breathe, Ray, breathe. Moving on. Now, some banks have an informal committee. The credit memo basically gets circulated to a handful of approvers, and they're gonna express their feedback in writing. And in my experience, if the chief credit officer, who's the closest person to the deal on that committee, supports your loan, it should get done. You basically need the majority of the committee to vote yes, and honestly, it's most often a unanimous vote. Now here's a twist. Many banks still assemble a committee and vote on your loan in a live situation. So let me paint the picture for you. Group of bankers sitting around a long mahogany board table, a couple bankers calling in on the phone, maybe there's a TV mounted on the wall so some folks can zoom in, and somebody stands up there and provides a 15-minute synopsis on the loan request. Maybe it's your banker, maybe it's their boss, sometimes it's the underwriter, it varies. They do their spiel and then the committee proceeds to ask the dumbest questions you've ever heard. All right, maybe that's a little harsh. Let me rephrase. Some questions may be raised that don't really have any impact on the credit decision. So anyway, they'll sit there and talk about this deal for like 30 minutes or so, and they will literally bring it to a vote of ayes and nays. Talk about old-fashioned. This is why the underwriter was drilling you. They have to go into this room and be prepared to answer all of these ridiculous questions. They know Bill likes to focus on liquidity, and they know Jimbo likes to talk about the market demographics. It's super old school. But here's the best part. They only meet every Thursday at 2 p.m. So if the underwriter finishes on a Friday, you're gonna burn 6 days waiting for that committee to get together. And here's one more curveball for you. What if they approve you, but now all of a sudden they want 15% down, or they switched up the rate on you? The old bait and switch. Believe it or not, this stuff happens. I worked at a bank early in my career that did this regularly, and it was the source of these gray hairs and ultimately why I ended up leaving. And that's clearly not a sustainable practice, and it leads to a lot of pissed off customers. And just for the record, where I work now, we don't put up with any of these shenanigans. We actually have one of the best processes in the industry. You know, the really good shops don't do any of this stuff. We pre-screen deals up front with the final approvers to ensure a high likelihood of execution. Now, why is this important? Because most small business owners have no idea this goes on. They receive a term sheet from a bank and elect to move forward because they like the interest rate. But sometimes what's on the other side of that term sheet can be a nightmare. If I was a borrower, I'd be laser focused on asking some pretty pointed questions about their process and their track record up front, and I recommend you do the same. So there you have it. If you found that video helpful and you want more insider tips from an actual SBA lender, I would invite you to click that subscribe button because I've got plenty more where that came from.